Strange Darling is a 2023 American thriller film written and directed by J.T. Mulner and starring Willa Fitzgerald, Kyle Gallner, Barbara Hershey, and Ed Begley Jr. Where have you gone, Ed Begley Jr.? Set in rural Oregon, the film focuses on a man and a woman who have a one-night stand that devolves into a cat-and-mouse game of murder. It is divided into 6 chapters in non-linear order, which is really rough to watch at midnight after you've worked 12 hours and then another
It's also
4.
just non-linear storytelling is one of Mark's least favorite things.
Only when Quentin Tarantino does it. And presented as a dramatization of the pinnacle of a serial killer's years-long murder spree in Western United States. Strange Darling was shot on 35mm film on location in Oregon in the summer of 2022 by Giovanni Ribisi, making his debut as cinematographer. We last talked about him in The Offer, which I thought was a very, very good performance by Mr. Ribisi. It premiered at the 2023 Fantastic Fest in Austin, Texas, and was given a limited theatrical release in the U.S. on August 23rd, 2024 by Magenta Light Studios, which would be one of the 20 reasons why we never covered it until now. It received critical acclaim for its direction, writing, suspenseful sequences, and twists, and for the performances of Fitzgerald and Gallner. It had a $4 million budget. It made $3.8 million, and it is currently nominated for an achievement in Pacific Northwest filmmaking at the Seattle Film Critics Society. It's got a bunch of nominations for Saturn Awards, and they're all in the pending state. All right, so tag in Roman.
All right. So as Mark mentioned, this is presented as a dramatization of the end of a serial killer's spree. So we open with that in scroll text. Then we see Willa Fitzgerald running in red scrubs across a field with blood streaming down her face. Okay, for the record, I am going to try and do this in the order, more or less the order that this is presented in, rather than the actual chronology of it. So bear with me, this jumps a little bit. So we open with her being chased through a field by the male character known as Demon, and she's known as Lady. This is all they're credited as in the script. And good old Kyle Gallner with his gun is chasing her through a field, shooting at her. She makes her wreck her car. She runs to a cabin in the woods where we find Barbara Hershey and Ed Begley Jr. living as old hippies. We then flash back to kind of the start of this, where those two are sitting in a car having a conversation about to have a one-night stand. We flash forward to her hiding somewhere in this cabin. There's bodies all over the place, and there's at least one body, blood, and Kyle Gallner is walking around the cabin with his gun going, "Here, kitty, kitty," trying to locate her, which he does. We flash back again to the intimate part of their one-night stand where she is a little bit kinky, getting him to choke her and playing with who's really the good guy or the bad guy here a little bit. Then we cut to the scene between her arrival at the cabin and when he is looking for her in the cabin, where we meet our old hippies eating horribly unhealthy food, just living the good life. Can I tell you, that just made me almost sick. I don't mind. I am not a paragon of health food by any stretch of the imagination. I'm a bit of a garbage belly. Even for me, the layering of whipped cream and half a jar of preserves and drowning it in maple syrup.
Ugh. I just got diabetes listening to that.
Yes.
Jesus.
You must have blacked out for this part of it, buddy.
Yeah. So, in what Robert is alluding to is something I told him off air. Like I said, I watched this at the end of. This might have been Monday night. So we'd done Damn You Hollywood. I'd already worked 12 hours or whatever it was. I was exhausted. I've had no more than 4 hours sleep for about a week straight for one reason or another. It's nothing to do with insomnia or anything like that. I work 2 jobs, have 2 kids. I'm trying to maintain a house, do a podcast. make sure the trains run on time, paint houses, and any number of. And I'm currently running in the next election. I'm busy. I have a lot to do. I've got consorting with whores to do. I never stop. So I'm trying to fit
Well,
in.
you could. My advice to you would be drop out of the election and stop consorting with whores.
Yeah, you would say that, you killjoy. Um, so anyway, my point is,
Yeah, which of us is going to live longer?
probably me, because God is unfair. But and I mean that in every way possible. But I
Okay.
digress. My point is, I attempted to watch this at like midnight, and because I needed to get this in, and I only had a limited amount of time to watch these three movies. So yes, I was in and out of Strange Darling. So yes, I missed the airborne toxic diabetes scene.
Yeah. Anyway, the crux of this scene is after Lady is taken in by them, she doesn't want them to call the cops, and winds up stabbing Ed Begley Jr. to death. You see, this is our big twist, everybody. The serial killer is not Kyle Gallner with his handguns; it's her.
Dun dun dun.
And then we cut back to kind of the end of their tryst, where she drugs him with ketamine. She presents cocaine, and he kind of goes, "Yeah, all right, I'll try that." But she's sneaky and switches which powder he snorts up. So he snorts up a nose full of ketamine while she gets the cocaine. She then carves an EL into his chest and is about to kill him, but he shoots her in the ear, which is able to stave her off. He then snorts a bunch of cocaine to try and counteract the ketamine. This takes a period of time. This is not one right after the other. There's stretches of time here. And then he starts chasing her down because he's actually a cop, and she's now running from him. And this is kind of where we pick back up in the cabin, where he has cuffed her to the inside of the freezer she was hiding in. And he calls in backup, and she goes, "Why didn't you just kill me?" And he goes, "You couldn't do it, could you?" Well, I certainly could have. And they share a bit of dialogue, and then she hits him with bear mace.
Not
And
just any
then
old mace, bear mace.
she bites his neck and tears open a major blood vessel, and he bleeds out on the floor. Then she pretends like he sexually assaulted her. So when the other cops arrive, the female cop is with them, goes, "Instantly, this is a victim, and we must do all consideration for her." And this leads to her being like thrown into the woods, and the other cop gets shot. If you're thinking this all sounds very horrible, well, as she tries to escape again, she flags down a car, begs for assistance, pulls a gun on this poor woman who's pulled over, but this woman pulls out a bigger gun and shoots her dead.
Good stuff.
And that's kind of where we are here.
Of the three movies, I like this one the least. So I'm going to make a statement right off the bat, so that I am not misunderstood and we start going in directions I didn't mean for us to go into. It's a good movie. It is well made. It is interesting. It is interestingly made. Just not my cup of tea. I I probably owe this another watch just to make sure I saw what I saw. But what I saw and what I was awake for, I was like, meh. It's funny, the amount of rave reviews this got. Like, you can see it in the poster. It's like, five stars.
Yeah,
You know,
this movie. I think I said it's a little too art house for its own good.
yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say, I think I used this phrase with something else. Might have actually been cuckoo, but it's a little too cute by half.
Give or take. Yeah, that's kind of again. It's about half too much an art film to
Mm-hmm.
be all that good. The twist I should have seen coming earlier than I did. That first time, hang on, I should have known it right away. I have a very specific reason for that. Because if I'd gone into this understanding, oh, this is a slightly too pretentious art house film, like fundamentally. Oh, of course she's the villain. She's in the red car wearing red when we see her first. This is like 11th grade level of symbolism usage, but that's kind of what most art house films do. So I should have picked up on it sooner.
It's fair.
Gave it a little bit too much credit. I picked up on the twist when they did their first conversation in the car outside of the hotel.
Mm-hmm.
because like, oh, again, by this point I've keyed into kind of the like what the film is doing. Like, oh, I know what you're gonna do, and that's not always a bad thing, for the record. But when the twist is a big part of what you're trying to accomplish,
I was
the
just about to say the film rests a little too much on, and the twist is the
yeah,
girl is the serial killer. It's like, all right,
yeah,
they here's the thing. This movie's a little too in love with its own dialogue.
hmm
The
it's not quite Flanagan level of monologuing at each other. It's actually
Yeah,
dialogue, but you're right.
it's the kind of script a pretentious college student would write and appreciate. Um,
Probably, yeah.
yeah, this feels like a group of sort of hoity Starbucks drinking, milk knit cat wearing intellectual college students would bandy about. You know, what big ideas we have, Grandma. And it's like, all right, but are you gonna say anything of substance, or are you just going to, you know, lay back and eat grapes of big ideas? Well, the latter. That's all we're good for. Like,
I
all right,
mean,
that's kind of this film for me. I can see why like the Chris Owens of the world, and I'm not picking at the guy, would like it because I think I the 35 millimeter uh, film usage helps.
yeah.
It does give it kind of a
It gives it
it
hang on, it gives it personality. Like
yeah, I was gonna say a grainy personality.
there's another mild gripe I have with this movie.
Hmm.
Um, a lot of what goes into it is presented as being 70s, and I don't just mean the 35 millimeter thing.
Yeah, very much so.
I mean, a lot of this is meant to feel 70s, and then everyone has smartphones. I've just got a little bit of a disconnect there that I can't, that doesn't
it
ever reconcile itself.
it has a grit to it. Like there were things that jumped out at me that I retained despite my being in and out and it being a few days ago. Her attending to her ear while being, while when she finally breaks away from him long enough to deal with the fact that she's bleeding off the side of her head, and she finds like a bottle of alcohol and dumps it on herself, and she can't make noise, so she's trying to like muffle herself.
Mm-hmm.
God, I've been there. Not necessarily in that scenario, but I've hurt myself real bad and can't make noise, and I'm doing the kind of Homer fiddly dee. That will
That will
that will
require a
require a
tetanus
tetanus
shot.
shot. Yeah. That just very much like and because you can't make noise for whatever the reasons are. I've been there, and I thought the actress handled that well. I think the star of this movie is the use of tension. I think a lot of the tension is
Yeah,
framed really well. The least interesting thing about it is the dialogue, and
in general, yes.
it rests entirely too much on the twist and I'm sorry, in the year of our Lord 2024, where I've had to watch 8 zillion, you know, badass boss women, gender swapping and everything else. And boy, I'm not going to go off on that rant or anything like that. Please stay with us, um, or at least don't run away for that reason. On the other hand, seeing a woman in a position of power, and in this particular case, your power draws from the fact that you're a serial killer, is not novel. And it's like the filmmakers like time traveled. Like where I come from, women aren't in positions
If
of power
if
and they
this
don't
had
kill
been
people.
if this had been made in 1975, as the
Right.
aesthetic tries to do, this would have been shocking and
Right. It's a
provocative.
drive-in double feature with Deliverance. Sure, now you got something. But it's 2024.
I would have done it with I spit on your grave, but
Yeah, you can do that. And, you can make this 8 hours, an 8 hour double feature, and do it with the Deer Hunter, which is still going in some drive-ins.
be nicer to the deer hunter.
I want to do a triple feature of Deer Hunter, and it'll just be the Deer Hunter. Anywho, what else you got about Strange Darling? Because I would
It's
recommend it to people, but I would only recommend. But this is one of those movies I'm only recommending to film nerds.
yeah. Generally, I'm with you there. The acting is pretty solid. Both Ford and Gallner do solid jobs. I appreciate that the violence in this is kept. It's slightly more minimalistic. It's
Hmm.
not off screen, but this is not a Gonzo gore fest. Like when the violence happens, it's treated with some weight.
Yeah,
And
it's gritty, and
yeah,
it's the kind of violence that happens between people trying to kill each other. It's not fantasy violence.
yeah, very much so. And considering the two other movies we're going to be talking about having some grounded violence in here was actually a little bit refreshing
Yeah.
because both of these other ones, not so much.
Oh yeah. Wait till we get to the substance. Just wait for it, people. All right.
So yeah, again, the acting from the two leads I think is actually quite good. There's a lot about it that's well made. I'm with you. Like, I would recommend this to a few people, but this is a cautious recommendation depending on how much I know you and your taste, not a blanket one.
The last thing I'll say about this is I think the praise that it's receiving it comes from somewhat the same place that I'm currently in that we're so desperate, we're so hungry, thirsty for
Anything
weighty film,
interesting?
weighty film
Okay.
that when you're doing something out of the box, it gets artificially inflated because
Yeah,
so much is firmly in the box.
I would absolutely agree with that.